Imagine 10 specks of volcanic rock scattered across the central Atlantic Ocean, 500 miles from the nearest coast. This is Cape Verde, a nation defined by its isolation, a place where the wind never stops and the resources never seem to be enough. Before this World Cup began, the global footballing establishment looked at these 10 islands and saw a mathematical impossibility. They saw a population of 500,000 people, roughly the size of a single suburb in Madrid or Buenos Aires, and they saw an easy 3 points. The narrative was written before the first ball was kicked, a cute story of participation, a colorful footnote in the history of a 48-team expansion. But the world forgot one fundamental truth about the Atlantic. The smallest islands often produce the most violent storms. The group of death was never supposed to be a survival story for the underdog. It was designed as a showcase for the elite. On one side, you had Spain, the reigning European champions, a team whose passing patterns are so intricate they look like digital code. On the other, Uruguay, a nation with 2 stars on their chest and a historical ferocity that defines South American football. And then there was Saudi Arabia, the 2034 hosts, backed by a financial machine that has reshaped the global transfer market in less than 24 months. Cape Verde was the statistical outlier, the team with a 0% chance of progression according to every major betting house in London and Las Vegas. They were the invited guests who were expected to leave early. Instead, they stayed and burned the house down. When the draw was first announced, the reaction was a mixture of condescension and pity. Pundits laughed. "Pack your bags, Cape Verde," they said. "Enjoy the weather, take some photos, and try not to lose by 5. It took exactly 4 seconds for the world to write them off. They looked at a goalkeeper playing in the Portuguese second division and a squad value that wouldn't cover the annual salary of a single Spanish substitute. They saw a nation that had never stood on this stage before and assumed they would freeze under the lights. But football is not played on a map, and it is certainly not played in a bank account. What followed was a 3-game odyssey that defied every logic of the modern game, proving that while money can buy talent, it cannot buy the specific, desperate hunger of a nation that has spent its entire history being overlooked. The numbers were absurd from the start. To understand the scale of this defiance, you have to look at the sheer physics of the situation. Cape Verde has a total population of around 525,000 people. That is not just small for a World Cup nation. It is historically microscopic. They are the 3rd smallest nation ever to qualify, and now they are officially the smallest nation in the history of the sport to ever reach the knockout rounds. Imagine taking every man, woman, and child from those 10 islands and trying to fill the major stadiums of the world. You couldn't even fill the city of Houston twice. Yet, on the pitch, they looked like giants. They didn't just beat the teams in front of them, they dismantled the logic that says big nations always win. The first test was Spain. This was supposed to be the execution. Spain arrived with 74% possession, a suffocating web of passes that usually leaves opponents gasping for air. They had 27 shots. They had the pedigree of Barcelona's academy and Real Madrid's clinical finishing. But they didn't have a way past a 40-year-old man named Vocinha. Standing in the Cape Verdean goal, Vocinha didn't just make saves, he staged a one-man rebellion. He was a goalkeeper who spent his career in the shadows of the Portuguese lower leagues, suddenly denying the most expensive strikers on the planet. Cape Verde sat in a compact, disciplined shape that looked less like a football formation and more like a fortress wall. They refused to take the bait. They dared Spain to find a gap, and for 90 minutes, no gap appeared. The world called it a fluke. They said Spain was rusty. They were wrong. Then came Uruguay, and the fluke theory was buried in the turf. Against the 2-time world champions, Cape Verde didn't just defend, they hunted. When Kevin Pina stepped up to a long-range free kick, there was a collective breath held across the archipelago. The strike was pure, a guided missile that announced Cape Verde's arrival on the scoreboard of history. But Uruguay is a team built on garra charrua, a specific brand of fighting spirit. They hit back, 2 goals before halftime. The dream was supposed to end there. The script said the underdog should fold when the giant wakes up. But Cape Verde had ripped up the script. Helio Varela pounced on a mistake, a moment of pure predatory instinct, and leveled the game. They fought toe-to-toe with footballing royalty and didn't blink. They weren't parking the bus, they were driving it into the heart of the Uruguayan defense. The final group game against Saudi Arabia was a different kind of torture. It wasn't a tactical masterclass or a high-scoring thriller. It was a scrap. It was ugly, tense, and physically exhausting. Two teams with everything to lose, playing on a pitch that felt like it was shrinking by the minute. Cape Verde held firm. They kept their second clean sheet of the tournament. But the true drama happened after the final whistle. The players didn't know if they had done enough. They huddled around a single smartphone in the center circle, their faces illuminated by the screen as they watched the final moments of Spain versus Uruguay. When Spain's victory was confirmed, the silence of the stadium was shattered by the roar of a nation. Grown men, warriors who had just survived 270 minutes of elite football, collapsed in tears. They had finished second, unbeaten, through to the knockout rounds on their very first attempt. If you want to understand why this happened, you have to look at the ledger. There is a chart from The Athletic that serves as a brutal reminder of the inequality in modern football. It lists the squad values of the teams at this World Cup. France sits at $1.76 billion. England at $1.58 billion. Spain, the team Cape Verde held to a stalemate, is valued at $1.42 billion. You have to scroll all the way to the bottom, past the giants and the mid-tier powers, to find Cape Verde. Their total squad value, $63.2 million. To put that in perspective, Spain's squad is worth more than 20 times that of Cape Verde. The entire Cape Verdean roster costs less than a single backup wingback for Manchester City. They didn't bring a cheaper version of the same game. They brought a different currency entirely. They brought a collective identity that cannot be traded on the open market. This wasn't a series of lucky bounces. It was the mathematical inevitability of a system built on defiance. The man who engineered this system is known as Bubista. A former captain of the national team, he understands the Cape Verdean psyche better than any foreign supercoach ever could. He stood on the touchline draped in the national flag, a blue banner with 10 stars representing the islands. His message was simple: once you are on the pitch, a lot of things become equal. He didn't try to outspend the giants, he out-organized them. He built a team that understood its limitations and turned them into weapons. They knew they couldn't outrun Spain, so they outpositioned them. They knew they couldn't outmuscle Uruguay, so they outworked them. Bubista's Cape Verde is a testament to the power of a clear idea. In a world of billion-dollar egos, they proved that 11 players who trust each other are worth more than a collection of stars who don't. But every revolution needs a symbol. And for Cape Verde, that symbol is Vosinha. At 40 years old, he is the oldest player in the squad, and perhaps the most unlikely hero in World Cup history. His career is a map of the footballing wilderness. He didn't even turn professional until his mid-20s. He spent years playing in front of a few hundred people in the Portuguese second division. He was even dropped from the national team during a dark period of failed qualifications. Most players would have retired. Vosinha stayed. Now he is a global icon with 16 million followers on Instagram. In the stadiums of the United States, fans who couldn't have pointed to Cape Verde on a map a month ago are now wearing his name on their chests. They don't cheer for him because he's the best. They cheer for him because he represents the possibility that it's never too late. The emotional heart of this story, however, was found in a luxury suite in the stadium. Ana, Candida Ivora, Vosinha's mother, sat there waving a tiny blue flag. She had missed her son's heroic performance against Spain because of visa issues, a common hurdle for citizens of smaller, less powerful nations. But by the time the Saudi Arabia game kicked off, the paperwork was sorted. She sat there as thousands of fans chanted her son's name. It was a moment of quiet, personal triumph amidst the global chaos of the World Cup. "We are small, but we have big hearts," Vosinya said after the game. It wasn't a cliché, it was a clinical diagnosis of their success. They are fighters because they have never had the luxury of being anything else. Even the shirts they wear tell a story of the underdog. While 24 of the 32 teams in the tournament are outfitted by the Big Three, Nike, Adidas, or Puma, Cape Verde wears Capelli Sport. It is a small company based in New York, founded by a Lebanese immigrant who started his business in a Brooklyn basement. The kit features a triangular pattern inspired by the flight paths between the 10 islands, a design they call "connected through rhythm." It is a poetic reminder that even though the people of Cape Verde are scattered across the globe, with more Cape Verdeans living in the diaspora than on the islands themselves, they are held together by a single thread. That thread is now being pulled tight by the gravity of a World Cup run. Now, the fairy tale faces its ultimate test. Waiting for them in the round of 32 in Miami is Argentina, the reigning world champions. Lionel Messi, the greatest player to ever lace up a pair of boots against a team of players who, collectively, earn less than he does in a month. On paper, it is a mismatch of cosmic proportions. It is David versus Goliath, but Goliath has a private jet and a dozen Ballon d'Or trophies. The realistic expectation is that this is where the road ends. The pundits are already sharpening their pens to write the valiant exit stories. They are saying that the dream has gone as far as it can go, but they said that before Spain. They said that before Uruguay. There is a specific kind of pressure that comes with being the favorite, a weight that Cape Verde simply doesn't have to carry. As midfielder Doi Duarte put it, "It's mad. I feel like I'm in a dream." When you are playing in a dream, you don't feel the fatigue. You don't feel the fear. Argentina has the history, the trophies, and the genius of Messi. But Cape Verde has the momentum of a nation that has already won just by being here. They have a goalkeeper who believes he is invincible and a coach who has turned 10 small islands into a single unbreakable unit. They are the team that nobody wanted to play because they have nothing to lose and everything to prove. The world is finally paying attention. The cute story has become a serious threat. People are looking at the blue shirts and seeing more than just an underdog. They are seeing a blueprint for how the game should be played. It's about organization. It's about heart. It's about the refusal to be intimidated by a bank balance. Whether they beat Argentina or not, Cape Verde has already changed the narrative of this World Cup. They have proven that the expansion of the tournament wasn't a dilution of quality, but an invitation for excellence to emerge from the most unlikely places. They didn't need a seat at the table. They brought their own chair and sat down at the head of it. As the sun sets over the training pitch in Miami, the Blue Sharks are preparing for the biggest 90 minutes of their lives. They are 525,000 people against the world. They are the $63 million squad against the billion-dollar giants. They are the 10 dots on the map that refused to be ignored. One woman in the crowd during the group stages held up a sign that captured the entire spirit of this journey. It didn't mention tactics or stats or squad values. It simply said, "Small islands, big dreams." In a few days, those dreams will collide with the reality of Lionel Messi's Argentina. The world expects the dream to end. But if we've learned anything from this tournament, it's that Cape Verde doesn't care what the world expects. The Atlantic is a vast, unforgiving place, and its children are built to endure. They have survived the wind, the isolation, and the doubt of every expert in the sport. Now they stand on the edge of the impossible. The stadium in Miami will be a sea of light and noise, a temple built for the gods of the game. But somewhere in that noise, you will hear the rhythm of the islands. You will see the blue shirts with the 10 stars. And you will see a team that knows, deep in its soul, that the size of the nation never dictates the size of the fight. Can a group of islands with 500,000 people really stop the greatest player in history? Logic says no. The numbers say no. But the people of Cape Verde have stopped listening to logic a long time ago. They are too busy playing. They are too busy dreaming. And as the whistle blows in Miami, the entire world will be watching to see if the Blue Sharks have one more miracle left in the tank. The story of the 2026 World Cup is no longer about the giants. It is about the dots on the map that became a storm. Small islands, big dreams. One final question remains. Who is going to stop them?